If you are thinking about starting Retatrutide, or you started Retatrutide and feel awful, or you're scared this is something you'll need forever, this video is for you. Most people escalate too fast or microdose blindly and then blame themselves or when their body pushes back. There's a way to feel really good on Retatrutide and a way to feel really bad. So let me show you the difference and how to not need this forever. Retatrutide is really powerful, as a few drug trials have showed us now. It is not gentle, but it can be. And frankly, most people are copying obesity trial dosing or diabetes type 2 uncontrolled trial dosing. And the issue is that they're oftentimes starting with huge doses to get the effects that they're getting. So it's what's the total dosing as well as what is the starting dosing. That's the question you want to be looking at when you're looking at the drug trials that have been done. And I noticed, I've watched a few videos on Retatrutide on YouTube, and there's definitely some folklore out there. There's definitely some YouTube folklore out there that's not quite the best advice. It's well-intentioned, but not quite the best. And you could be microdosing out of fear and not even getting enough as well. And then because the dosing is wrong, it's, I feel terrible, or my energy crashed, or the biggest one, am I going to need this forever? That's like a huge one. Like a lot of people don't want to be on that forever, and you shouldn't need to be on it forever. And so stay to the end, because I will demonstrate to you, I will explain very, very easily how to understand how to go about this. As always, this video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice or create a doctor-patient relationship. So first on microdosing, because the drug trials showed once a week injections, right? So once a week you get this. Most people in the drug trials got what I would consider a huge bolus once a week. So there's like this huge blast. In the drug trials, 1 milligram was the lowest dose they used. So 1 milligram a week. Then 4 milligrams, 8 milligrams, all the way up to 12 milligrams, which is a humongous dose. I don't know how anybody can tolerate that and enjoy their life still. So technically, because of the drug trials, technically any amount of Retatrutide less than 1 milligram in a week total is technically microdosing. I think a lot of people are calling microdosing like taking it multiple times a week, which I'll get into that. There's definitely a time and a place for it. So again, microdosing, if you're taking 0.5 milligrams in a week, once a week, that is technically microdosing. If you are taking 0.25 milligrams or 1/4 milligram 3 times a week, that adds up to less than 1 milligram in a week. So that is technically microdosing. If you're taking 0.5 milligrams or 1/2 milligram 3 times a week, that is technically not microdosing. So I just wanted to explain that because that's a huge misconception out there. And I think microdosing maybe sounds smart because it's cautious. And why am I a fan and also not a fan of microdosing? Or maybe the better question is microdosing best for me or not? Maybe that's what you're asking yourself. And my answer is, and you'll learn that a lot of my videos say it depends, because it does. What's your starting point? Are you obese? Do you have uncontrolled diabetes like in the studies? Or are you overweight? Do you have a few pounds to lose? I especially prefer looking at visceral body fat, which is best visualized through a DEXA scan. And so I'll answer the question, yes, I'm a huge fan of microdosing, especially for the first one or a few doses. I actually always recommend people start at a total of 1/2 milligram a week. So whether that's 1/2 milligram once a week, or if you're a really sensitive individual, your physiology is very not resilient, I would actually recommend half that dose. So 0.25 milligrams or 1/4 milligram once a week to start out with. Then the second week, you slowly titrate up. Most people, if you have any extra weight to get off, if you have any metabolic markers, blood sugars are not perfect, most people end up falling in the 1 to 2 milligrams a week for the total dose, right? Now that might be broken up You might choose to take it twice a week or 3 times a week. But I think starting with a microdose keeps us cautious because there's always this huge benefit, side effect versus benefit. And I'd rather people not feel side effects. There's no point in feeling bad on this drug. You should not feel awful on this drug at all. And it's not really a drug yet, I would say. That could be debated, but I'll get more into that later. And I would just say that the negative side effects or undesirable side effects truly should be non-existent. I want to drive that point home very much. Your energy should feel very stable on this. And everyone has a personal equilibrium physiologically. The goal should absolutely not be what's the highest dose possible or what's the highest dose I can take. It should be the lowest effective dose without penalty or without the undesirable side effects. So I am a physician, though none of this is medical advice to anybody watching this, but I'm a physician who likes to try things on myself before I talk to them about it as much as possible, as much as reasonably possible. So I did try 1 vial of this out and it was very interesting. I kind of suspected that I would be overdoing it, but I actually wanted to feel some negative side effects so that I could talk about it more intelligently. So my very first dose was 1.5 milligrams. I did that once for the week, waited. And that first day and a half, I definitely felt not like this nausea, but definitely like kind of, I would say food repulsion is maybe a better way. I didn't like that. I want to enjoy life. I don't want to be repulsed by food. I want to be able to enjoy life. Food is medicine when used appropriately, when taken in wisely. And so that was interesting to feel that. Now, typical to what the half-life is known to be, which is about 6 days, I would say right about day 5, 6, the effects wore off. So after that first day and a half, I definitely started feeling really good. I felt all of the so-called good benefits where I just didn't have that sugar monster that's constantly in my mind. I mean, I've always had a sweet tooth and I always love food. I eat very healthy food, but I at times eat a little bit too much. I go back for seconds when I don't really need to. I don't know if it's a Japanese saying, but it's kind of a Japanese way of eating, and that's eat to 80% full. And on this, I was able to do that. I still enjoyed my food though, after that first day and a half. And that was really nice to be able to eat until I'm 80% full and be able to say no. And I would my family members actually would eat sweets and I'd be able to very easily say no. Whereas in the past, I would have to rely on willpower to do that. And so that was really empowering to be able to do that. The other thing is I'm a stress eater. So when I get really stressed, I definitely I go to the cupboards, go to the fridge, hey, open it up, what's in there? Now, fortunately, my house is full of pretty healthy food, so it's not as bad as a lot of people, but still not something that I'm proud about myself, right? And that was gone. I was able to still have my little time periods of work stress and be driven to the cupboard or the fridge. Again, super empowering. So the main obesity study for retatrutide, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2023, called Triple Hormone Receptor Agonist Retatrutide for Obesity, a phase 2 trial. Now, if you look at it, you'll notice the dose-dependent weight loss. However, the higher doses had a lot of side effects. Not serious side effects, but a lot of nausea, a lot of gut disturbances, heartburn, just not desirable. Now remember, this is an obesity trial, so the stats can be very well interpreted within that context. However, a lot of people who are taking Retatrutide these days are not even obese. It might be overweight, might even be kind of in the normal weight range, but still have some metabolic markers not quite right. Oxidized LDL might not be quite perfect. hsCRP might be elevated. So the dosing really needs to be interpreted in that context. So what's the best dosing for someone looking into this or having just started? It depends. And that really should be thought through with a lot of care and attention. Now, one other thing when you look into the study and the data is that 70% of the weight loss was fat loss, which leaves 30% of the weight loss was from lean muscle and actually bone as well. That part is not good because muscle is the organ of longevity. And so, however, to put a positive spin on it, compared to the first and second generations of the retatrutide, the first and second GLP-1 generation drugs, those were about 50-50. So 50% of the weight loss was fat loss, but 50% was from muscle and bone loss. That is really not good. So retatrutide, way, way better, right? 70% from fat loss and only 30% from muscle, lean body mass. However, again, still 30% is not good. Again, these are in obese individuals, so that data needs to be interpreted within that context again, but still not ideal. So my question is that 30% muscle loss necessary? And I will say absolutely not, but stay tuned to learn how not to lose that 30%. How not to have 30% of the weight you lose be from muscle. Retatrutide. I would call this a G3 peptide, could stand for third generation peptide, could stand for the triple hormone agonist, because they all start with G, GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. So I call it a G3 peptide. So let me go through GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon in order. So GLP-1, this is semaglutide. The branded drug was Ozempic. This is the first generation. And GLP-1 slows gastric emptying, so your stomach is fuller for longer. It suppresses appetite, and it does improve glucose control. But taken alone, it also slows your metabolism over time, and you lose muscle. Neither of those are good, and it's why you get rebound weight gain if you come off of it. Now, GIP. So the second generation peptides or drugs, the second generation is tirzepatide, branded as Mounjaro and Zepbound. And forgive me, one of those is technically FDA approved for diabetes, and the other is technically FDA approved for weight loss. They're the same drug though, the same exact thing. And it is GLP-1 plus GIP. Now, GIP improves insulin sensitivity, reduces nausea, makes fat loss less catabolic. Now, what do I mean by that? Catabolic fat loss is really equal to losing weight by stressing the system so hard that the body burns fat and sacrifices lean tissue and metabolic rate and neuroendocrine stability. That's why people experience, and so again, the GIP actually minimizes that badness. So that's what people experience with overaggressive GLP-1 dosing, rapid appetite suppression, chronic nausea, undereating, cortisol dominance, right? Not a good thing. Muscle loss, fatigue, and the weight rebound. So again, GIP, what it does, just to drive home the point, it softens that signal that is too strong from the GLP-1. So GIP actually softens that signal that is too strong from the GLP-1. So the body doesn't interpret weight loss as a crisis. GIP also helps calories actually go into the muscle, which is a good thing. Now, first I talked about GLP-1, second was GIP, now third is glucagon. So this is the third generation retatrutide. Technically, there's no brand or drug yet. Quote me on this exactly, but I think Eli Lilly or some other drug company paid $10 billion, basically trying to get all the rights to it and be able to brand this drug. If they do that, which they probably will, it'll probably become the biggest drug seller of all time, I would think, at least on like a annual basis, which will be interesting to see. However, the sad part right now is that because there's no drug version of retatrutide, mainstream doctors, most of them haven't even heard of it still. And if they have, they don't prescribe it because mainstream doctors don't prescribe peptides. sadly, which is a sad state of obviously mainstream medicine, but that's a whole nother thing. But shame to our medical system. I will interject here that I believe the Ozempic, Mounjaro, and the Zepbound should not be prescribed for almost any reason. Retatrutide far trumps those, is far better than those. So why is glucagon so special? Because it turns the liver into a fat oxidation engine. It increases energy expenditure. Remember those other ones? The GLP-1 actually slows down metabolism. Glucagon actually speeds it up. It activates brown fat, which is good. And it improves insulin sensitivity in the liver cells, the fat cells, and the muscle cells, and even in neurons. Now, the fact that it does it in neurons, that's like a whole nother video. So GLP-1 plus GIP prevent glucose spikes, which is a good thing because glucagon can, by itself, increase glucose spikes or blood sugar spikes. So you have these three instruments in a symphony that are playing in perfect harmony together. And that is a beautiful thing. And that is why retatrutide, I have become a very big proponent of it. I sat on the sidelines for a while. I wanted to see how it really played out in people. To this point, though, it's a great thing. It's a great tool to have in the tool belt. And so much of that stems from the fact that it keeps metabolism going. So fat loss is ultimately deeper. You get more muscle sparing. You don't lose as much muscle. And if you do go off of it, the rebound is very minimal, which is also great because your metabolism was never slowed down to begin with. So back to the muscle preservation, because again, in that trial, 30% of the weight loss was from lean body mass. Not a good thing. Can we minimize that? Absolutely. And how do we do that? By basically taking in enough protein and working out enough, or optimal amounts. So essential amino acid powder in water is a nice way to do it. Protein intake is paramount when on retatrutide, more so than ever before, because in order to not lose the muscle, we need to have enough nutrients to build muscle there so that the muscle, whenever it questions, where are we at? Do I break down muscle or do I preserve it? Having an adequate protein on board is paramount. Now, one kind of hack or trick is to also, in addition to food protein, taking essential amino acids can also be really beneficial, especially because taking a very small amount, so sometimes I'll take, this is even not on retatrutide, but sometimes I'll take 5 grams of essential amino acids, which is about the equivalent of taking 25 grams of food protein. That's very powerful, and it's because you absorb it at like close to 100% compared to food protein. Animal protein, 50%, vegetarian proteins, you actually absorb at a lower rate than animal proteins. So a little extra boost is to take essential amino acids and really aim for close to a gram of protein per pound of lean body mass every day, which most people have a hard time getting to that. Now, that is not medical advice. Some people might need less, some people might need more, depending. The other thing, because muscle is the organ of longevity and we want to preserve it, how do you keep muscle? You got to use it. You use it or you lose it. And so resistance training, muscles, is so important. And that's what will minimize that 30% decrease in muscle mass. And done very wisely, you can actually gain muscle while losing fat, which is pretty awesome. That is very, very possible and absolutely can be done. But resistance training needs to be part of the routine. Full stop. There's no way around it. Gotta do it. What do I mean by resistance training? There's a bunch of different, most people think of weights. Could use bands, you could lift heavy things. It could be just body weight though. It doesn't have to be with big heavy weights. You don't have to go to the gym. You can if you want, but you don't have to. You can do a home body weight exercise routine. That counts. That'll do it. Now the exit strategy. And I believe this is where the true freedom lies potentially for you. There's a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. It's one of the better, or at least it was a top seller for a long time. So many of you probably have heard of it. I would highly recommend you read it. Check it out, because developing the habits while on Retatrutide, for me, for instance, I'll talk about myself, like that sugar monster was not there, the stress eating was not there. Now I have this kind of new mental model based on an experience. I'm like, okay, I was actually able to not even just not listen to the Cookie Monster, but like really like know that it doesn't even have to exist. And again, that's empowering. But if I do that for long enough and I just slowly train myself and I develop that habit, I suddenly, off of Retatrutide, I have more ability, and it's different than just willpower, right? We can muscle through and we can use willpower short term, but that's always short term. It's only a matter of time before I fall off the bandwagon, before almost every single one of my patients falls off the bandwagon. And I'm almost done, so stick with me just another minute. Walking outdoors, sleeping, getting good quality sleep, preparing simple meals, writing habits on a paper are all really useful while you're on Retatrutide, because habits build systems and identity beats goals, and your behavior will follow your identity. And so there's this real chance to change your actual identity, because then you don't have to rely on willpower alone. Retatrutide lowers the friction to training your habits very well. Building those habits build freedom, and it makes it easier to come off of Retatrutide and experience life without it. And sure, you can go back on and do cycles of it if needed, if your lab markers show you need it or that it would be beneficial. However, I'm interested in freedom. Freedom for myself, freedom for you, and using the tools to gain that freedom and make that freedom easier is what it's all about. So walking shoes by the front door, or running shoes by the front door, or gym bag by the door, whatever it takes. Make protein visible in your refrigerator, make it visible in your pantry, and very easily accessible. Because it's hard to rise to the intention that you set out for. I don't rise to my intention for very long. I can do it short term, but long term, we almost always fall to our defaults, or we fall to our floor. So in summary, there's a way to feel really good on Retatrutide and a way to feel really bad on it. And the difference is starting dose and dose escalation and metabolic respect. So hope this was helpful to your health and to your freedom.